explosion of nuclear bombs in the atmosphere. So we live in a world of trade-offs and benefits versus risks. We cannot have any good without paying for it. Didn't you know that virtue has a price? Didn't you know that being decent is costly? Don't you know what the price tag on decency is? Don't you know what you invest in and what you buy when you become decent and virtuous? That is sick. It is sick, and it contravenes the whole course of morality, of spirituality, of anything that we can call truly human, anything that we can call truly civilized, anything that we can call truly social. Our market economy has become a cancer in our society today, pervading everything, objectifying everything, quantifying everything, and simplifying everything, and above all, simplifying our communities. And it becomes essential today to examine, first of all, the very sensibility that produced hierarchy itself. And that is not going to be performed on barricades. Everybody is ready to die in the American left and even among American liberals for the revolution, but nobody is willing to change the relationship between men and women in the family. It's amazing. It is amazing that we are ready to die for great causes, but for such trivial everyday practices as who does the dishes and who cleans the house and who takes care of the children, there suddenly manhood or womanhood asserts itself. It's astonishing. We are capable of such heroic acts on the scale of history that we can never apply in everyday life. Our education begins in the cradle. Our education begins in the home. Our education begins at the very nuclear sources of human association, where we socialize ourselves and socialize people, because don't think for one moment that we can socialize young people as adults without being socialized by that very act itself. It's long been said that slavery is as bad for the master as it is for the slave, because it poisons the mind. And systems of command and obedience based on coercion, based on fear, not on instruction, which are different entirely in terms of command and obedience. That implicit violence that exists in the home, that implicit violence that exists in the immediate community, in the immediate terrain of life, and in the very act of socializing human beings, and being socialized in the process of socializing them and interacting with them. On that terrain of le quotidien, of everyday life, that has to be conquered before anything else can be conquered. And that means a re-examination of our sensibilities, our way of thinking on the order of 1 to 10, our relationship to life around us, our relationship to the community around us, our relationship to people around us, and certainly our relationship in our gender roles, and our relationship in our parental roles, and our relationship in our age roles. Those have to be re-examined. They have to be brought into question. They have to be brought into analysis. They have to be brought into critique. We need education in the sense of enlightenment, not simply in the sense of instruction. Education is not simply the process of finding out who's got a gift and sitting down, focusing on that individual and bringing out the Mozart in him or her, or bringing out the Van Gogh in him or her. Not quite Van Gogh. Let's keep it on a more sane level. Let's say Cézanne. Or Rembrandt, if you like. In bringing out the poet or the poetess, the writer, the novelist, or for that matter, the engineer or the ecologist or the scientist, or the businessman, although I don't know. But I'll just throw it in for the hell of it. In bringing that out, no, that's not enough. Education is enlightenment in the 18th century concept of illuminating experience, of illuminating an age, of bringing in light where there is darkness and where there are shadows, where there is superstition, where there is irrationality, where there is fear, where the power of tradition is brought to the service of command and obedience, hierarchy and rule, of making people conscious, not just one or two individuals, and not in the schematic way of a classroom alone, but in the everyday experience such, and this becomes crucial, that public life is educational, that politics goes back to the original Greek word of managing the polis, or the city-state, in the Athenian sense of a direct face-to-face democracy. The polis was the arena in which one was educated into citizenship and into consociation, into solidarity, and into a sense of community, enlightened rationally as to one's goals, one's morality. To separate education from the community is to both divest and simplify education and to turn it into technique, to confine it to the campus or to the school, which appropriately has a fence around it like a jail, and is partitioned from the rest of the neighborhood. Or to take politics and turn it into nothing but mobilization for power. In either case, we destroy both politics and we destroy both education. We simplify it, we subvert it, we empty it out, just as we are today turning the Black Forest into a moonscape, just as we are turning the whole equatorial belt into sheer hard cement because of the nature of the soil and the interaction of soil and aluminum in the soil and iron in the soil with the sun and moisture. Leached. We leach education of its content. We leach public life of its content. Which brings me directly to the question of community. What I have tried to describe up to now is the enormous interaction between our environmental or ecological crisis and our social crisis. I've tried to show that the domination of human by human is what produces the idea of dominating nature. You can never dominate nature. Forget about that. It's like lifting yourself up by your bootstraps. Everything around us is a particle of nature, is analyzable, at least so far as the scientific point of view is concerned, in terms of physics, chemistry, and biology. So you can't dominate nature. You can simplify nature, and in so doing, undermine the very ecological basis for human beings and other forms of life, complex forms of life. So I've tried to show that the domination of human by human gave rise to the idea of the domination of nature. And with that the sensibility, with that the technology, and with that the science. I've tried to show that finally with the perverted development of the marketplace, the bow that finally reached its maximum weight, we've invaded every aspect of life, especially since the 1950s, with a buyer-seller relationship, with the objectification of all human relationships, with the homogenization of all human functions and roles. All of my perspectives have started from that one point of domination and have extended from nature into society and have shown the interrelationship between the two. There is no ecological problem that isn't social. There's no social problem that doesn't have ecological ramifications. You can't separate the two. And until we go far enough in dealing with our social problems, we will never resolve the ecological problem. As long as domination persists in society, whether it's a sensibility, whether it's a morality, whether it's an institution, whether it's a practice, whether it's an economy, whether it's a science, whether it's a technology, then it will persist in our relationship with the natural world, and it will only worsen the situation, not better it. I've tried to show that in simplifying the natural world, we are simplifying also the social world for the same reasons, by turning everything into objects until we ask, who are we if we're not objects? And now the question is, what reconstruction? And I've started out by saying reconstruction must begin on the most molecular level of our social lives if it's going to ramify outward into society.